Kathy Franks is here to show us how she uses borders and background designs to get a particular look in her quilting. Kathy is an artist and award-winning quilter, and we're so happy to have her back on the show with us again. Welcome, Kathy.
I am thrilled to be back, Linda. Thrilled.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here, and from what you've shown me, I know the viewers are going to be excited about what you're talking about today. Let's just get right to it.
Well, you know, as quilters, we have so many things we get to play with. Fabrics and batting and beads and paints. But what I want to talk about is thread. And some different aspects of thread that some people may not think about. And the first one that I want to talk about is weight.
Okay.
Thread has different weights, and if you look at some of the spools, you're going to see little numbers on the thread. The lower the number of the thread, the thicker the thread.
Okay.
The higher the number, the thinner the thread.
Okay.
So I have some samples sewn out right here that can show you the different looks that you're going to get with the threads. And that's important, especially when you're doing a lot of dense quilting like I like to do, that you will get a more delicate look with a thinner thread. And that's very well illustrated right here.
Now you've got writing on these too, so it's kind of important to document what you've put down.
Correct. I document what the thread is, the weight of the thread, because I'll go back and look at this and I won't remember. I don't remember what I did yesterday.
What a great idea.
Right, so
And
this
always have this to reference.
That's a great reference point. So if everybody would do that, that would be fabulous. Then another thing that I want to talk about is color.
Oh,
And a lot of quilters don't understand the color. And what I've done here is I have done some different fabrics, and then I have quilted all of the different colors across the fabrics.
with different colors thread.
Right, because that's going to show you what's going to show up and what is not going to show up. And something that a lot of quilters don't look at is the value of the color of
That's
the
kind of a mystery to me, the value. So
the value, just like in our piecing, if you use the same value in all the different parts of a block, the block design wouldn't show up.
you're right.
So as in quilting and using thread, if you use the same value of thread as in the background, the quilting won't show up.
And we want our quilting to show.
And we want our quilting to show up. So I have an illustration over here of to show you how to do that. Here I have a red piece of thread or fabric with different colors of thread on it. To help you find the value, if you put that in a black and white copier and copy,
Oh, that
your
really tells it.
values come right out. So you can see which color is really going to show up.
Wow, what a good idea. So you need a copier.
You need a copy
Yes.
machine to do that.
Wonderful.
And then one other thing that I want to show with this little piece, a lot of us are getting a lot of these embroidery designs that we're quilting
Very
for people.
popular.
And I love the variegated threads that are out right now. And I thought on one quilt, oh, that's going to look great. Well, it didn't, because you can see with these two samples, this one, where I have the color, tends to muddy up the design.
It takes away from
It takes away
embroidery.
from it.
Where
So
this-
the white makes it look good.
Very
So those
good
are
tip.
just some tips
Very
that I
good
wanted
tip.
to share on how to do that. This is a sample of how important the thread color is. Again, here we have white that blends with the background.
But you can hardly see the design in this
Hardly
one.
see the design. A variegated, and variegated
That's pretty.
thread tend to make the designs go in and out and flow, and then just a solid
That really
purple.
shows. So depending
That
on the
really
look
shows.
that you wanted here.
Correct. So you really want to look at all of these to decide on the color.
So it's important to
of the thread.
audition your thread.
I audition everything.
Wow.
And just for fun, we have all these specialty threads out on the market.
I love specialty threads.
I do too. So I have a little sample here to show how all the different specialty threads show up in color and texture.
And they would kind of look different on different color of fabric, wouldn't they?
Exactly. You
But
want to
you-
audition.
Yeah, and you can feel the texture on some of the different ones.
Which I love, because when people, unlike a lot of people, I like people to touch my quilts. I like for them to reach up and go, how did you do that?
Yeah,
That is a lot of fun.
Very
So that is a texture. And then I want to show you some of the fun things you can do
Ooh.
with thread. This,
That's amazing.
the wings, the mane and the tail are all done
all
with
thread.
thread.
Oh, that is adorable.
So it's
Wow.
not just three-dimensional.
You're really quilting, aren't you?
I'm really quilting, and the
Oh,
thread
so
manufacturers love it, let me tell you. And this is another example of what you can do
Oh, my.
with thread. And it's so simple. This is just done on a dissolvable base, but I didn't put light and dark thread in here. I just used this cone of variegated.
Just kill two birds with one stone.
Right, it's
there.
easy. It's
Oh,
really
these
simple.
are wonderful. And then you applique, or
And then I
just-
applique them right onto my quilt.
but machine applique.
I machine applique that, and you can see that in my Russian fairy tale quilt. That's how the horses, the hair, and
Everything was put
and
on.
all of that, the dust underneath it, that's all
Do you
thread.
fuse them first, or just put them on with your Longarm machine?
No, I just put them on with my Longarm
Oh,
machine.
amazing.
It just works great.
Oh,
Just
I'm
do it
so
that way.
impressed.
So, but when I'm playing with my thread, I'm always doing different designs. So on my cloth of gold quilt, these were auditions of different thread colors.
So if you have a piece of the fabric, use that to
Use the
addition
fabric that you're using and the batting that you're using,
okay.
because that can make a difference. And I auditioned different colors of thread to see what would work and what wouldn't work. And one thing I want to point out on my cloth of gold is I want you to notice that I used a light green thread throughout the quilt. And what that helps is that helps your eye travel up through and around the quilt. If I hadn't used that green, the quilt would have been flat.
Okay.
So you want to look at adding different colors throughout the background quilting of your quilt to help your eye travel up through the quilt.
Oh, what a neat idea. And also adds all that, the extra spark
Right.
to your quilt as
And
well.
then on the background of the Russian quilt, the Russian fairy tale quilt.
Oh, and by the way, that quilt is awesome.
Oh, thank you. I really worked hard on that quilt.
Oh.
At first I was just going to use black thread, and I thought, no, that's not going to show up the design. So I went to
No.
red. And this is the back, this is the
the
design
design.
that's in the
Okay.
quilt. And then I thought, well, what kind of background quilting am I going to do? So I auditioned, and I did this type of background quilting.
Which kind of loses the whole design,
It lost
doesn't it?
the design.
Yeah,
So I
can see
went
that.
to the little circles.
Oh,
that brought the
pops it
design
right out.
So this is a really good example of how you really want to audition and play with the different backgrounds that you're going to do. Because what you think is going to work may not work.
After a while, do you get a kind of a sense? I mean, do you have
You do. After
do?
you've been doing
If you
this
do
for
this
so
along?
long, you really get a sense of how you're going to go about
Okay, so
quilting
we
the
can
background
grow
of
with
your
this.
quilt.
Oh,
You
that's
can grow
great.
with the quilt.
Okay.
And this is another sample of the background of the Russian quilt. This is how I came up with the design that's in the background.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And you have to allow yourself to play.
Okay.
That's-
Hey, I can do that.
That's one of the most important things I always tell my students. Play. If you don't allow yourself time to play, you're not going to come up with these different ideas.
Did we ever think we'd grow up just to be able to play?
No, but it's fun. It's fun. Now with design work, these are some samples of how I have just a feathered wreath, but how the different backgrounds totally change the look.
Oh, my goodness.
See,
Yes.
Look at how the different
Oh,
backgrounds
completely different.
totally change the look of the feathered wreath.
Wow. So you can really get an idea of what you want on your quilt.
Exactly.
No
Now,
surprises.
I have a quilt here that illustrates several of the aspects that we have talked about.
Okay.
This is a quilt that I painted the background, and it's green. Then I went to my color
So
wheel.
you painted this?
I painted
Oh,
it.
wow.
I painted it with fabric paint and
Okay.
sprinkled salt on it and let it dry, and it
Yeah.
did all this fabulous texturing on
beautiful.
here. Then I thought, well, for the background, I don't want the background quilting to show up that much, so I used green in the same value, and I wanted the design to really show up.
Oh.
I first had a lighter purple, but again, the value matched this, even though it's a complement.
It
And a
still
complement
didn't show
the
up.
complementary color of a fabric, if it's the same value, it'll wash right out.
Ah.
So I put a darker color of purple on here.
Complement but darker.
Complement but darker.
I see.
Then I chose a design. I found a design that I liked, and I copied it several different times. And I laid those copies like this to show me how the design would fit onto the quilt.
Fabulous.
That fit beautifully. So then I drew the design and quilted the design out.
Okay.
And to add a little embellishment, I put some beads in this one.
Oh, yes.
What I really want to show you on this quilt that I find so fascinating is these purple borders were put on with the Longarm machine.
Oh, no way.
They're
You're
put
kidding.
on with the Longarm machine.
Really?
And they're dead on.
Are you going to show us how to
I'm
do
going
that?
to show you how to
Okay.
do that. I'm going to show you how to do that.
Oh, boy.
This is a sample of how I did that. This is
Okay.
one of my bleach discharged overdyed pieces.
Okay.
Now when you're getting ready to put the borders on with your machine, you're going to make sure that your backing and your batting really extend beyond the body
Okay,
of your
so you got to
quilt.
have enough, yeah, because
Yeah.
you don't want, you got to have batting under
at
there.
least 6 inches.
Okay.
You're going to go ahead and quilt the body of the machine, of the quilt. Go ahead and quilt this.
Okay.
Then you're going to take your sides, your borders, and I already put these 2 borders on.
Okay,
just to
and they're
illustrate.
quilted.
And they're quilted.
Okay.
You quilt them. Now I'm going to show you how to put the other borders on. What you do is you have your quilting here, then you go to your machine and you put a basting line right across here.
Okay.
You want to have a basting line so you're
How are you going to make sure that's straight or square?
because your machine is straight, you're going to put your machine on horizontal hold
Oh, okay, yes, they have
and
a
just
lock.
baste right across here.
Okay.
And that's going to be straight.
Okay.
Then you're going to take your border, right sides together, line this right up with your basting stitch.
Okay.
And what I do is I have a hot steam iron under my machine
Okay.
and I press this and it locks,
And it's because it's cotton to cotton.
because it's cotton to
Okay.
cotton, it locks it together. And then you can put a few pins in there.
Yeah.
Then I put the back of my foot right here because that's 1/4 of an inch. And I stitch right across here
With your lock again?
with my lock back on.
Okay.
Then I fold this
Flip it over.
press it, and finish my quilting.
Wow. Well, I'm blown away.
It is so simple
We're
to
like
do.
piecing on the Longarm machine
I
now.
do. I do my strip piecing right on the machine.
Oh my goodness.
And just to show, I have another little quilt here to illustrate. These were also, the borders were put on with the Longarm.
Oh, and they're just so square and they're beautiful.
They are just so square.
Beautiful.
And another little thing
What
that
is this?
Okay. You know all those silk flowers that you're throwing
Oh
away?
yeah, I've got a lot. You
Okay.
know, they get old and you just kind of throw them away.
Tear them off of the
Plastic.
vining.
Okay.
And with a glue, a little dab of glue, put them on and put them
And
on with your
stitch?
Longarm. Stitch with your Longarm. Now, one thing you want to do with this is you want to put your background on first.
Okay.
And then build the layers
Background
up.
quilting first and then this
Right.
on top.
And then your back of your silk flowers, put the ones further back on first.
Okay.
And then build up.
And a layer. Kathy, these ideas are going to keep me busy for a long time. Thank you so much for sharing all of these. Why don't you tell us about some of the fabulous quilts that you brought? Embellish on that a little bit for us.
Well, if you look at the cloth of gold, I told you about the green thread that follows through here.
Yes.
But if you really look at that, you want to see where I have 2 different types of background quilting. I have the tight little circles, and then I have all those wonderful meandering lines. I want you to see how the contrast between those 2 different types of quilting really make the quilt come alive.
Kind of adds another dimension, doesn't it?
It adds another dimension. And on the trapunto, I've also shaded that with some different
I
fabric
wondered how you
paints.
got that. You painted it. then.
Those are different
Okay.
fabric paints. So that really makes the dimensional aspects of that trapunto show up. And then on the Russian fairy tale quilt, if you look at the horse's mane, I've used 2 threads through 1 needle. And what that
Really?
Yes, it's
On
it's
the
very
long arm.
on the long arm. It's very, very easy to do. And what it does is it blends those 2 threads at the same time, and it gives it more of a watercolor effect. Instead of just laying 2 threads on, it makes it a lot more harsh. So
Okay.
you're blending those two colors together.
And you don't have trouble with the two threads coming through? Oh,
no.
that's
In
wonderful.
fact, it makes it work better because one of those threads is a rayon, and it makes a rayon thread stronger to have it run through with a cotton thread.
Okay.
The horses, what I want people to look at is the way that I have stitched the design actually gives dimension to the horses. You want to look at a horse and you want to look at the muscular structure of the horse beneath it. So I was trying to mimic that, and I don't have an art degree, so I just went to art books and looked at how they drew that, and I just followed the lines of the drawing. So that helped create all of that. One thing on the Russian quilt that I want to point out is the driver has gloves and a hat. That's just yarn that I laid down and couched over on the long arm. And on her hair, the way that I got little highlights in her hair was I did take and do her hair, and then I ran over it with different colors of thread to give highlight through her hair.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome.